Oh, hi guys, Scenic here. So this is just a quick little update for Music Monkey, and just going to show you guys my computer stuff today. This is going to showcase how I maintain my computers and how I also am able to do beat making and maintenance at the same time. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys how I do it this whole time. I've been making music for 2 years now. It's a really interesting experience maintaining all of this, and I'm thinking of getting a new computer soon, but I have to figure out if it's going to be for vocal mixing or something else. So let me guys just show you real quick. So the first thing I do is I open up my computer, or both computers. I start with one computer at a time, this computer and this computer. And what I do is I essentially check everything. First, I'd go ahead and do a quick little registry cleaner. Now, the thing about registry cleans is that you don't seem to really understand unless you're a computer whiz. I mean, I don't really know, but I've heard these things can be dangerous to the registry. So what you do is, if you really want to speed up your computer after a while of the registry building up, including when you're beat making, all you have to do is just do a quick little registry. So then I also am able to check things like Windows Defender, and I also am able to check everything. I go through the entire list and I just scroll down and I just make sure that everything looks good and that there are no issues. But if there are, I mean, I have ransomware protection, which blocks any threat. That way my files are backed up to the cloud, including my music files, just in case something happens. And I also do the same thing for this one. Now, this one asks me for permission because it doesn't really trust it, but that's just the computer. But yeah, what I do is I just make sure that both these computers, and see, obviously, this one, it has a registry clean that needs to be done, so I just click clean, and then I go through this. This thing needs to be defragmented, but I choose not to do it, and then I close it. So now that all the techie security stuff has been checked, let's move on to the... Alright, so the next thing I do is, not only is the registry and the Windows Defender, and I mean, if you have a Mac, I would suggest getting a third-party software, but now that like to check the files and stuff for security purposes, but now that the registry, like the main things like the registry and the security problems have been looked at, if there are any, now that that's all been solved, now I take a look at my files. Now, I use cloud storage to store backup files, and I just back up my files. So I use OneDrive. Now, there's Dropbox and other things like that, but my computer is extremely clean. This is the computer, the main computer that I choose to essentially do beat making on. Now, this computer is very key here. This is a completely, like, clean computer, free of anything. This thing has never had any issues. This one, however, is much more in RAM and storage, and it has more issues, but I constantly maintain this one. This thing, I mean, if you have a computer when you're doing beat making, almost likely a Mac in this situation, but I use Windows just because it's cheaper, and they have constant amount of updates. Update it, that way the updates are done. Now, I also have almost a terabyte of storage for this one, and it's only 288 gigabytes used. Now, using up that much space is pretty good, but I also have some backup files. Now, what do we do next? Well, the final couple of things to do is to first check for any disorganized files. All my files are named correctly, and they have to be, because that way I don't have to go back and look at them. Now, if you would like to be able to organize your files specifically, I suggest doing things like I have a major productions folder, and what I do is I put in first the BPM, well, first name of the song, and then the BPM, and then as you can see, this thing's pretty quick because of how well it is maintained, which is why it's very important to maintain these things like that. So what I do is do beat pattern first, then actual beat, and I can go into these and like so, and I can just see, now this is the actual beat, but it's empty. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here is disorganized files are not going to make your beat making experience easier. It's going to make it tougher. But if you organize your files well, it'll sure go well for you. Now, what is the final thing I do? Well, I also do some extra things. First of all, because of how much software is on this one, because this is my main work computer for music and beat making purposes, I check the task manager. I check things like, first of all, processes, and then I check CPU. It's currently low. Memory is high because of how many apps are running in the background, as you can see. or software, whatever you want to call it. Then I check first disk. Disk is not being used. Wi-Fi is low. GPU is low. If all these things are low, your computer is going to run a lot smoother. But then I also go to things like Event Viewer. And that's how I check for other things that are going to affect my computer if there are any errors. Now, as you can see, it's not showing up correctly, but things like audit success for security and setup and system, computers are going to have these sorts of errors. But then I also go to something called Acer Care Center. This is the main care center of my computer because this is an Acer Aspire 5. I got this one for not too much. It was about $430 with tax. But then this is loading pretty quickly here, as you can see. I can scan these drives and memory and battery, and I can even scan the LAN or the Wi-Fi, and then I can do tune-up or update. I can do things like that. And then I can delete junk files or disk cleaner or disk defrag. Now, Wise Registry Cleaner can do that, but I choose not to do that. Now, for this computer, it's really not the same thing. I mean, I always check if CoolSense is on, just because it keeps the computer nice and cool, because this thing doesn't have a fan compared to this one. And finally, if you really want to make your computer really fast, get a fan, because this is ice cooling. This is 6 fans. And what's nice here is that this fan keeps this laptop so cool. I've had this fan the last 3 weeks. It's going to constantly keep it cool, which makes the beat making process and the audio editing process and the finalization and everything so smooth and not too slow or anything like that. It just makes it a perfect experience, even though computers are not perfect. So just so you know, guys, these are my tech tips for today. This is how I do it. If you guys are interested in anything, just let me know. I am also willing to give tech advice if I can. But other than that, there will be an update for a new computer and new software and a new soundboard, like a new mixing board, things like that, sooner or later. Not right now, but I will let you guys know possibly in the next video.